right, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Welcome to this RMM Optimization Bootcamp. I'm Mark, I'm the Automation Nerd. I am more commonly known as the French guy that speaks too fast. If you've been on any of my webinars before, that is definitely a trend. If you don't know me, I am the person that sits behind the scenes and get to create a lot of content for you guys, so I have a lot of fun doing so, building automation objects, scripts, managing part of the nerds team, and helping in any which way I can. At the bottom right, you have my social media account. That is the best way to reach out to me if you have questions or issues. So those are there as well. This is where I post when we have new content, things that we're working on. So it's always nice to be able to show that. The checklist is pretty straightforward. Before we get started, we recommend that you have access to your RMM dashboard with admin or super admin. Having said that, I'm going to be very careful and say I really don't recommend you do any changes during the webinar. Perfect. And the reason I say that is that if you go through what I'm going to talk about today, some of it may apply to you, some of it, to be honest, may not. Depending on your maturity level, how big or small you are as far as deployment size, how many stats you have, and a variety of other environment factors, some of this may or may not apply to you. So this is super important that you don't do the changes on the fly and just shoot from the hip, and that you take some notes, which is my third point. You should have a way to take notes, either do it on your computer, paper, whatever you want to do, really. If you have a scribe, just have him do it for you, whatever you need. But make sure that you take notes and that you revisit that as you go along. There's also a supplemental knowledge document basically covering some of what I'm talking about today, not the whole thing, but some of it. So make sure you download that document. It's a little PDF attached to the webinar, so super nice to have. And finally, absolutely should get a snack, because this is going to be a while. I'm going to talk for more or less an hour and a half, 2 hours straight. So this is a lot of content to digest, literally. So it's always good to be ready for anything that comes our way. So again, this is going to be a good one. We did it this morning. We've done it a few times before. This is a webinar that I thoroughly enjoyed going through because I find that there's a lot of value. As far as recordings, I can't guarantee that. I keep getting asked that. At the moment, there's no plan to put a recording. There might be one in the Institute once it's edited and done. It is recorded, but I have no confirmation one or the other at the moment. Typically, new webinars like this, we tend to keep live only for a little bit, so I'm not sure what the plan is. I'll, we'll know more as time goes by. This is not my decision anyways. So as we start, there's a few resources that are available to you. The first one is the cookbook. The automation cookbook is where we put all of our scripting and automation that we create. This is a growing list. It's going to continue to grow. It's over 500 at this point, and my goal is to do 10 to 20 new scripts and policies and monitoring a month. As the nerd team is growing, you guys are going to meet Charles pretty soon. He's our new Mac nerd, and he's going to help me on the RMM side. He's going to help create more content for Mac and for RMM. If you're not aware, we also have a page called status.ndashable.com and uptime.ndashable.com, if I'm not mistaken. These are good to see the release notes as new updates are done. This is a cloud platform, so it is updated periodically. So that page is nice. And Uptime will tell you if there's any alerts and things like that. So you can subscribe to both and get alerted when there's a new thing. It's just a WordPress site, essentially. The Institute has a wonderful amount of training, and it is constantly growing while Aris and his team create new content, the nerds make new content, and so on. So definitely you're going to want to go take a look there if you have not done it before. There's a ton of different training material and videos. Market Builder, finally, it is a more on the sales and marketing side, but since there's a few owners here, I'll go over that very briefly. This is a site that we have created, and it is basically a set of ready-made marketing resources for you guys to help you be efficient and be able to get out there in your market and sell. Again, your growth is our growth. We have a very organic relationship, so we want you guys to be efficient and work well, so that is why we did this. So all of these resources are things that we do not because we want to, but because we feel we should. And this is something that's there to help you guys. None of this is something that we charge for. This is all part of your RMM thing. So please take advantage of them and benefit from this. All right, let's set the expectation. This is gonna sound a little silly to talk about at the beginning, but honestly, there's a lot of content to go through, and there's things that you should decide early on in that process. Not this second, but you guys should decide as you're going to do this. If you've been with us for a month and you're starting fresh, you're going to work differently through those material than if you've been with us for 10 years and you're trying to do some kind of overhaul or cleanup. So the first thing you want to decide, who should I involve in this, right? A lot of times what ends up happening is that the engineers will get involved. They'll get a help desk guy to help and do some of the tasks. They'll say like, nah, we don't need marketing, we don't need sales, and we don't need management. We'll just figure it out on our own. Or maybe management has a little bit of oversight, right? And that's what we see a lot. Honestly, what we'll recommend for this is everybody in this bucket should be involved. And the reason that we say that is that account management and sales and marketing are producing material, contracts, and getting customers on the premise you're going to do certain things. The account managers might be promising you're going to do patching every week. Sales and marketing might be going out and sending flyers out to say like, oh, we monitor these 50 things. If you, the engineers and the help desk teams, don't map to these things, then you're in trouble, right? So through this cleanup, revitalization, optimization process you're going to go through after watching this course, hopefully, you need to sit down and have stakeholders from all these different teams. If you're a small company and you only have 1 or 2 people, that's okay. Put them in a room and have a discussion. If it's only yourself, that's okay. Talk to yourself and figure it out. It works too. But what I mean is you want to have a component of every group involved in this project because there's an important component to everyone in this. You also want to create an alignment between what you sell and what you deliver. So if your account managers say we're going to do patching every week, make sure your patching is done every week. If your account managers say we do patching every 2 weeks and RMM only does weekly or monthly, maybe have a discussion with them and reset that expectation, right? So you want to align what you do versus what you sell. You also will be able to use this process to expose opportunities when you monitor environments and you realize like, oh, these laptops have dead batteries in them, they need to be replaced. Okay, go to the account management team and sales and go like, maybe you should have a discussion with the customer and replace that. Using the monitoring, using the platform, you can find these opportunities. So through this revitalization and optimization process, you might be able to leverage that and make money off of this and make sense of this as well. You also want to improve the confidence of the sales team. Having worked with sales team before, having worked with MSPs for years, having worked within MSPs, I found that sales was never really comfortable going after a partner or prospect in this case and be able to sell on the value of the services. They go like, oh, we have this checklist at the stuff we do, but they never really are comfortable with there, which means they usually involve engineers, which cost a lot of money to the company to bring more people. So you want to give them confidence back. You want to show them what you do. You want to discuss it with them. You want to involve them in the process, and that makes sense. And finally, these projects are a good way to get junior members a chance to shine. As the engineers make a decision, we're going to change this, and that's going to take X amount of hours. You can leverage your help desk team or your rising star and say, hey, do you want to help with this project? And they might be very happy to help you out and do a lot of these configs and changes and things like that. So you want to leverage them as much as you can there as well. So having said that, that's why you want everybody. And management should be involved, period, because they're management and they need to know what's being done, what the contracts are, and so on and so on and so on. So that makes sense. Now let's talk time commitment. Are you expecting this to take an hour? Are you expecting this to take 6 months? Whatever that is, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is you want to dedicate distraction-free time. And that sounds like a stupid thing to say in this day and age. Oh, whatever. But honestly, you want to set yourself in a room, or if you're working from home, just go in your office, close Teams, close everything, and work on these tasks only. And the reason that we say that is that MSPs are always jumping back and forth between 5 different things. And when they do, it's very hard to focus on those more complex projects to make these decisions, to make these configuration changes in bulk. Since RMM doesn't have a good way to change monitoring for every device all at once, it becomes a little bit difficult to do some of these. So you want to reduce the amount of errors and go through each machine and clean up. And that will make things a little less stressful, and it will make it more easy to generate more ideas as you focus on these tasks. Like, hey, I can also do this. Hey, we should also do whatever, and it makes it easier. Now, How much time you should budget, honestly, will vary very greatly on the health of your dashboard. Once again, if you've been with us for a month versus 10 years, obviously your cleanup and your health level will be different. If you've been maintaining the platform very well, you may only need a tune-up, or you may need a full overhaul, right? Number of devices and clients that you have also makes a difference. If you have 50 devices, monitoring cleanup might take, an hour, whatever the case is. But if you have 20,000, they might take a tiny bit longer, right? And how many people you assign to this will also make a difference. So all of these things is the reason why I can't give you a definitive answer as to how long it'll take. I would say start by assigning, maybe an hour a week, 2 hours a week to someone, or half a day if you can afford it, and start that way. And then as you start, benchmark it. Say, okay, here's the 10 things we'll need to do to attain our goal. Change the patch config, change the behavior of this, change the behavior of that, tweak the monitoring this way. And as you start doing that and chip at it, look at how much time it takes you to do each task, and then build a plan around how long it should take, divide that amongst the team members, and then you know what you should be expecting. It sounds basic, obviously, but that's the main real good way to do it. That's the main reason why I can't give you it will take X, because I just don't know is the truth. So you want to be smart about your goals, right? The first part of that is that you want to be specific. You want to reduce the number of workstation problems you have by removing unneeded checks. A lot of checks people put over the years are like, oh, we're going to add all this stuff, but then they put the monitoring for, let's say, web root. But then you don't have web root anymore. You move to Sentinel-1, doesn't matter, whatever product. And now you still have the web root monitoring. It generates false alerts. It's just noisy, and you just avoid it and ignore it. You want to reduce those kind of noise. So you want to be specific about what you find, what you should clean up, and what you should remove. You also want this to be measurable. And that sounds like a funny thing to say, but you want to have a way to say, okay, we see we have this many issues, we have this many devices, this many clients, this many whatever, and make sure that those issues or those failed checks or those whatever goals you're hitting is actually going down. So as you're fixing problems, the numbers go down and down and down to a manageable point. You want to make sure that whatever you ask your techs to do, that it's attainable. If you tell them like, oh, you have to do 500 a week, realistically, they might not be able to do it for each check. They may have too much stuff. So you might say, you know what, hit 5 failed checks per day until you're done. So do it on your lunch, do it, well, not your lunch, after or before the lunch, right before you come back, spend 5-10 minutes, do a little bit here, or right before you leave, take a 10-minute here and there, and do it like every day, purposefully, carefully, and just keep chipping at it, right? You want to also make sure that whatever you have left is relevant. You want to encourage your techs to do the right thing. You want to encourage your techs to give whatever failed checks more attention. What I find a lot of times, people go into the active issues, you're like, oh, there's a ton of noise and whatever. No, that's not whatever. You need to clean that up. If you have issues and you ignore them, then what's the point of those issues, right? A lot of people will be like, oh, we have all these failed disks and we don't care. And I'm like, no, you should care. If you don't care, that means the thresholds are not set up properly. Let's tweak it together. And I've started traveling again recently, talking to partners, and that's what I found when I was talking to partners or seeing them in their offices. So you really want to take that time to decide what is meaningful to you. The last thing is you want to make this time-based. You want to find whatever things you need to do and decide all along. So if you say, you know what, okay, I have 200 problem workstations. Let's say I'm going to assign it 2 technicians and it should take 4 weeks to complete. That is my interval. How do I need to assign the time and what do I need to do? Once you benchmark it, you'll know. But you need to assign a time for this. You don't want this to be the never-ending story, right? Like you want it to be I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, the techs get discouraged, the management gets discouraged, and it just becomes a money pit, and nobody likes that. So you want to do all of these things. And yes, I'm very preachy right now. I know. Sorry, I'm making a little kitty cat. Hey, buddy. I'm very preachy right now. I get it. But it's all important stuff. You want to be very deliberate. You want to take the time to invest and to do these things right. And a lot of people don't do that, and that's usually why these products will fail. So that's why I'm being very preachy with you guys, is because I do believe it is very important and it is often overlooked. All right, now let's start talking about checks. And we're gonna start with obviously 24/7 checks, daily safety checks or DSC, and the tasks. They each have a component to play into this one. And we're gonna start with the checks. So as we start with checks, you want to keep all of these under control. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of checks that you're going to see on the machines for a variety of different purposes and reasons and whatever. Some of them should be there, some of them should not be there anymore, some of them you need to adjust and so on, but you need to make a decision as to what you want. As you look into it, you're going to want to ask yourself 3 questions. Is it relevant? Is it the appropriate threshold? And what should I do about it? So the first one is that, is it relevant, right? Is it part of your contract that you should monitor this? Or is it a plus value I give to my customer? Is it actually relevant anymore to that device? Like I said earlier, if you're monitoring web root but you're using Defender, or if you're monitoring Defender and you're using EDR, well, what's the point, right? Like, you're just creating noise because it's like, no, Defender is not working anymore. Then you just ignore them. It just gets messy. It doesn't make sense. And then finally, is it redundant? If you have multiple checks doing the same thing or very, very, very similar, that might generate a lot of alert noise, and you don't want that either. So you want to think of that. So once you decide, okay, that thing is relevant, I need it there for X reason, totally fine. You want to first of all look, is the threshold correct? Should I tweak something? Should I modify the threshold somehow? Because if I get a failure and I ignore it because the threshold's like, yeah, whatever, then you should adjust the threshold, right? Because you want to make sure and say, by the time I get an alert, something should be action. I'm not saying when you get the alert, you should literally jump off your chair and run and do something. I'm saying it should be the point where you say, okay, I should not wait 5 days on this. I should do it now. So if you monitor disk space, don't put it at 99%, but put it at a percentage where you're comfortable that now I need to do something or run a script or do whatever. Also, we recommend never clearing a check until the next time it passes, until a check passes, sorry. And the reason I say that is that a lot of times people will do that. If the check never goes back to a green state or a pass state, it will stay into a failed state forever, or a cleared failed state, and it will never go back to green to go back to red, so you would not know about it. So that becomes a big problem. I don't like using that. The last pillar of this is, how do you respond, right? Should you do a ticket? Do you even need a ticket? Some people say, you know what, for disk issues, I don't want tickets. Just leave them in the dashboard. I'll do a report once a week and I'll clean that up. That's fine. So you want to decide that first. The next one is, can I fix it somehow by automation? Can I script it and can I self-heal? An example of that is that if I want to do a script to monitor if UAC is disabled, re-enable UAC. If the disk is full, clean the disk. If smart screen is disabled, re-enable smart screen. If RDP is enabled on a machine, disable RDP. If a service stops, restart a service, and so on and so on and so on. The more you can automate, the less menial task your team has to do. Also, you want to look into root cause of the issue so that you can find these things. A lot of time people will just basically like, oh, this stopped, restart, all right, move on with my life. And if you don't find the root cause, you'll never fix the underlying issue. So if you spend that 20 minutes on some of those issues, you find the root cause and you find that the fix might be to do something a little more complex. As long as you do that, you're in good shape. So let's go into the platform and take a look very quickly. So, all right. So now that I'm here, I'm into my dashboard, right? So the first thing you want to do, you can use your dashboard here, go to active issues, just like that. And now that I'm in active issues, now I can see all the checks on said machine. And I can say, okay, those are all failed. Those are the problem I have. I can sort, I can filter, I can see all that information. Super nice, very easy. Now, this information is what you can then use to say, okay, show it to me by the client name or by the check or whatever they are, right? The type of check. So, okay, I have a bunch of AV checks for Windows Defender and spyware. I then have a bunch of little backups for Max Backup. That's fine. Then my disk space and so on and so on. And there's, now I know what they are. I can then decide which ones I want to tackle first and then make that number go down. I'm at 91 right now. And again, making them measurable. If you look measurable, if you're looking at it over a few days, this view will give you what you need, and then you can start chipping at it and slowly decreasing that number until it gets to a manageable state for your standards. Yeah, that's essentially just that. If we go back here, now what I would recommend is to look into those devices and say, okay, I'm seeing that. I go into a client here, look at everything, I go and select, oh, this one has some failures. Click on it. The AV is not up to date. Clearly, nope. The pattern is not okay. and it is on this version, which I guess is not good. That's fine. 341. Okay, so yeah, so it is not on the right version. So it is saying something is bad. So now I can do a few things. I could run a script to update it. I can do a few different things, but I need to make a decision and clean that up. It could be doing patching. It could be doing a variety of stuff. But this is where you want to make sure that you take a look and you clean those issues up and make it go back to green. Or it could be that you're not even using Windows Defender. Maybe I'm using something else on this machine, right? And then you can decide. Now, what I was talking about earlier is if I hit the little checkbox and say save, you have the option to clear until it passes by itself. That is the one that I really, really don't recommend using. If you know 100% it will go and clean itself, then yeah, you can use it, but I really, really don't recommend it. It is there because some people need it for, pick a reason really, but personally, I only use these two. So you can say, okay, I just did a fix. I'm expecting it to go back to green. So keep it checked, cleared until the next time it runs, which will be, if it's a DSC, the daily safety check will be next day. If it is a regular check, it'll be anywhere from 15 minutes, 5 minutes, or an hour. So that's also fine. Or you can say, you know what, I did the fix, but it's gonna run tonight. Let me know and stay into a failed state until tomorrow 9 a.m. and okay. So that way it goes away. It is into a cleared state, but it's not fixed. It's just waiting for tomorrow morning to let me know if it is fixed or not. And that becomes quite useful. So as you guys clean these things out and decide what to do, you can clean it. The next thing you want to decide is, are they relevant, right? So for example, on this device, I'm monitoring disk space change as well as disk space. You might say, you know what, the space change is good. The disk space, I don't really care as much. So I'm going to do edit, and I'm going to change that threshold to be, I don't know, 5% left. Once again, whatever makes sense for you, for your business. If I look at this here, I can see that the history, it is at, hold on, where do I see it? Here. The change, maybe that a little bit bigger, 0.1% since the last time. That is not a big deal, and that is okay. And that you can threshold if they say, if it changes too rapidly, there's a problem, adjust it. You can do it for multiple devices at once if you want it as well. So you need to tweak all of this however you see fit and make sure that all these little configs items are to your liking. One of the most common annoyances as far as noise is patch status. Patch status, basically, if you're missing one patch, will go failed. So some machines, some environments that I know that I'm working with are like, 10,000 devices. They'll have 10,000 alerts just for patch status. And if they don't care and don't look at it, what I typically recommend is to go into your patch policy here and change that to be report mode. And if that is what makes sense for you, then fantastic. But I'm just, you need to decide whatever works for you and adjust from there. So that's good. Now, the next thing from this is to start using tasks to remediate some of those things. What you can do is go to tasks. You can add a task and say, you know what, I don't care, just do this, doesn't matter. Once you do a task, you have the option to say, when do I want to run it? You can say daily, you can say weekly, whatever, by just unchecking, saying only run Friday at whatever time, that's fine. If you do it recurringly like this, you have the option to say, if you miss your schedule, run it the next time. I really, really recommend you use that, unless it is intrusive. If it is something that's going to cause discomfort to the end user, then maybe not as much. But typically it wouldn't, so I really prefer to use that option. If you also only run this for the next week, make sure you use the limited period. So say start today and in 2 weeks, for example. But in our case, I would say use a check failure. So that is going to basically do a self fill on disk space for C. So if the disk space check goes into a failed state, I changed it to 5% earlier, this is going to run and it's going to fix itself. This is going to be on that one device. If I want to do it in bulk, I can say here, add a task in bulk for that customer. And yes, it is by customer only. If you have 100 customers, this is going to suck a little bit, but this is the way that this works right now. The only other way is to do it through template, but you still need to apply it. All right. Hopefully this is kind of somewhat helping so far. But sadly, there's no magic. There's no magical answer I can give you. And I really wish there was, to say like, hey, do these 5 things and you're done. There's a lot of cleanup. It takes time. It has to be done. It has to be deliberate. It has to take time to do it properly. And once you do it, then you'll be at a point where things will be stable. So it's just a matter of looking at all these things. Now, another thing that's often overlooked is a Windows service monitoring. So like Print Spooler, for example, is going to show up by default on this domain controller or this server. I think that one's actually the domain controller. If I do edit, I can say restart it automatically if it fails, and only notify me if the service restarts too often. So if it does it more than twice in a day, let me know. So I can actually do that where the service will restart, and if it doesn't work, it will let me know after 2 tries, or if it tries twice during a 1-day period. So you can use the service itself in some cases to do the automation or the self-healing. The more you can configure things like this and chip at it one thing at a time while documenting it, that is the very big key that people forget, is documentation. Once you've found all these things, you document what you're doing, you do it in bulk as much as you can, redeploy through template, through mass application and things like that. This is going to make a huge difference into your day-to-day. So we're at the point where you started tweaking some monitoring. Once again, you remove the ones that you don't care for, like here, Windows Defender and Bitdefender. That doesn't make very much sense. So this should probably be deleted. You need to put your password, you do OK, and boom. Because if I have managed AV, I don't need to use that as well. It should be either or. So those are good cleanup. And in this case, you see everything is green except for my Windows Defender because it's not updating it anymore, because it's not working anymore, because we're using Bitdefender, right? Makes sense. So that is a good example of that. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Again, as you're going to be applying these, as you're going to be playing with them, this is going to be something that becomes very, very important. Now, I wanted to go to template, but I'm going to keep it because I know there's going to be a slide pretty soon on that. So for now, once again, just monitoring services, taking a look at them, making a list of what you should tweak, and doing it. What I recommend typically is to take your time, go through, pick a few devices per customer, 1 or 2, and make a list of what you think should be changed. And you'll realize like, oh, there's a recurring theme here. And then you can start making a list. See if you see this condition, do this, so that when you give it to your junior person or whenever you take the time to do it, you know what to do. You know what comes next, and you know how to bulk create this. That makes it so much easier. The next thing before we move on to the templates, honestly, I want to do templates first. Let's do the templates. I was going to do custom checks, but I prefer to do templates first. So if we go to settings and I go to templates, I can manage my own templates and make templates right from here. Add a template, boom, and use it. I can modify a template, I can clone it, I can delete it, whatever I need to do. The templates are going to be a collection or a group of services as well as, or checks, as well as tasks. This is basically what they are. If I open a default one here, I have all this stuff in it. I can see critical events and this and that and whatever. I can add my own by coming here and doing that. So if I want to start fresh, make a new workstation template, and I'll call it test 1, doesn't matter. I can add whatever checks I want, whatever DSC I want, and whatever tasks I want. Now the template, when you apply it to a new device as a default, you still have the option to add the default stuff. So it will still do that, the discovery and application for you, no biggie. But you can then add or tweak. So if I see, you know what, I want to add a disk space check, and I want to change it so that see the default is at 20 instead of 25%. When I apply that template, it will overwrite any device threshold. Obviously, you would expect that. But it's also gonna allow you to apply to new devices. And when it does, the default threshold would be 25 through the discovery. The system is gonna go, oh, you made a template with this in it. I'm gonna apply to your template in it instead. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is if I add a task here and I say I would like to do a disk cleanup of some sort. So it's easier if you don't make typos, by the way. I'll see disk cleanup here next. And as I use that policy, I'm gonna see run it, uncheck failure, disk space, and see. I'm using the most simplistic example I can, is just to show you guys it's not that hard. I could also do it by saying, based on this monitoring condition, do the self-healing. If the service stops, run this. If this happens, this, and so on. This one, super easy. Okay, it made a template called test 1. Duh. So now all I gotta do is apply that template to the devices I want. So I can right-click here and say apply template. And then I need to pick workstation, pick test 1, and done. Now, when you say pick a template and apply, I can then have the option to say add the checks to the and task to the machine, but replace if they exist. If you already have a disk C, don't add it a second time, which would be silly. You want to replace it. Or I can say, if you don't have a disk C monitoring, don't add the monitoring, simply replace it. That is also an option if that is what you want. And then you apply that to all your customers, and then that self-feeding happens. So as you find whatever tweaks you need to do in bulk, you can start applying these templates in bulk to everybody. And that will save you a lot of time as far as configuration goes. And that is going to help you tremendously. Someone is saying, I see a Windows update and a group policy client are the most common service check to fails. Are those recommended to use? Yeah, definitely. If you're having issues with these services, all you got to do is add a service. So, you know, it would be whatever service they are. So let's say you have your GP client. You would simply have it, you would go to edit, and then you would make sure that you configure it to auto restart, right? And that is not a big deal. That would totally be an option. Now, this is the AV one I picked, so it wouldn't have the restart, but see, this one does. Once you have a pristine device that you like, you can also right click and say, make a template from it, and that will generate a template right from that device for you on the fly. So if that is something you're looking for, you are more than welcome to do it as well. All right, before I start rambling too much, we're going to talk about creating custom checks now. The reason I want to touch on that is that it's something that a lot of people seem to be scared of for a variety of reasons, really. A lot of it's because they find it too complicated, it's too convoluted, I don't know what to start, whatever, that's fine. Doing your own custom checks and DSCs is very simple if you follow the methodology. If you have a PowerShell script already, it is going to be a little more difficult, obviously. But the script will run as whatever version the endpoint has. If it has 5.1, it'll be 5.1. If it has 3, it'll be 2. So make sure that whatever script you create, you will match the PowerShell version. Now, in your script, you will either add a exit 0 line or an exit 1001 line. These lines will be, well, obviously not this whole thing. That you won't need. It's just to explain what it does. Exit 0 and exit 1001 will tell the PowerShell environment that there's an error. And exit 0 means there's no error. When it does that, that code gets passed back to RMM, and that code will then tell RMM, is this check passed or failed, or is the automation completed with error or not? So that is what you're going to use on your thresholds, right? I'll say, okay, if whatever issue I have is not fixed, exit 1001, there's a problem. Or if everything's okay, exit 0, no biggie. So if you're using PowerShell, that's how you would do that. Now, if you're using Automation Manager, it's a little bit easier to implement. You would use a drag and drop script building environment, and there's hundreds of pre-built up. I think we're about 500 on that front. And then the failed policy and failed check will give you more or less the same thing as the exit code. So these are automated for you here. So you can build really anything you want in a matter of, you know, a few seconds, minutes, depending on the complexity. But this is something that hopefully you get yourself familiar with. This is not an automation course. This is not an automation manager course. This is not meant to be a scripting lesson. We have a PowerShell course. We have an automation bootcamp. We have a monitoring bootcamp. We have all of these things that exist for you guys on those topics. This one is about tweaking the environment, but I do want to touch on this because this is something that people will not do, and they do it by fear or they do it by lack of knowledge. So I wanted to at least touch on it, so that if you're not familiar with it, you know it exists, you know it's not that hard, and maybe I'll get you to take a look at it a little further if needed. So what I'm gonna do is go back to my dashboard. If you've never used automation, you go to settings, you go to script manager, where is it? Here. You go to the automation manager and download. I know I went quickly. Settings, script manager, automation, download, easy. Once you download that, I'll give you the installer. There it is. The current version is 2.19. If you have 2.18 or before, you're going to want to update. Not a big deal, but you'll want to update. Once you do, this is what the UI looks like. There's little building blocks you drag and drop, and then you're good to go. This one is something I did in the office hours an hour ago, where it reports back on the version of Windows being 21H1, and then I can say, if it's not the one I want, do a failure and let me know that I'm missing something important, right? So Microsoft supports 2 major releases behind. So you can say if you're not A, B, or C, then go into a fail state. You would do an input parameter, configure all that, and boom. So you don't have to do any PowerShell scripting. You just copy paste the registry, you configure it, and boom, you're good to go. Here's an even easier example. I can come here and say, is UAC enabled? This is super easy. It returns, is UAC enabled? Yes or no. In my case, yes. Then I can say if, use a little chain link right here, is UAC enabled, equal to false. If UAC is not enabled, then I could say enable UAC right there. I personally don't like to do that. I prefer to separate the tasks, but it's up to you. What I would then do is use what I was talking about earlier, fail policy. So what it's going to do is when I run this, I'll say if UAC is not enabled, fail the policy. So this is a script check ready to use. Literally, that's it. That's as simple as it gets. Save this, go to RMM, upload it, use it on a machine, and you're good to go. I already have a copy of it. All I got to do is go to settings here, script manager. Let's see, is UAC on right there? I uploaded earlier. So what you would do is you put the name is UAC enabled. It's a script check for Windows. Browse to your M file, save it, and it shows up. Now that you've done that, all you got to do is pick a device, go to check, add 24/7 script. Now you can monitor it real time like that, or you could do it as a DSC. Now for that one, we'll do real time. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at my list. There's a ton of stuff. Pick this guy. Okay. Timeout in this case is okay. I could do it on multiple devices. I like to do it in bulk, but this time around, I'm not gonna. Actually, you know what? Yes, let's do multiple device. It shows you all the devices. I'll say, okay, I would like to do it on all of those guys. They don't have it already. I'm gonna say add. Is UAC on next? Yes. It's telling me I'm gonna add this to 4 servers for that client. Yes, it's fine. And now these 4 servers just add this added. So I go to servers, not problem servers, all of them. There you go. Now this check is there on all these guys. So I made a custom check. I added it to all the machines. And because I'm not super patient, I'm going to just right click and say run. And by doing so, it's going to tell them to run. It's going to be usually fairly quick, usually within under a minute. And when it does, it'll tell me if it is okay or not. And in this case, hopefully it is. But it's quite literally just that. It's just a matter of making your script check, applying it to the device or devices, whichever one you prefer, and then you'll know if it's a problem or not. So hopefully I'm still kind of somewhat making sense for everybody. I know I'm going somewhat quick, but nothing too crazy. And that would be kind of what you would need to do. And then the next thing real quick, so let me take a note, I forget something. Okay, just take a note, so don't forget. What I would then do is come back here, and we did that. Talk about custom tasks. Now, custom tasks like automation, scripting, things like that. Okay, going good, Christopher. Thank you. Is custom tasks is automation, it's scripting, a thing that you can do. You can do a ton of stuff. This is really where your platform starts to shine. This is really where you're going to differentiate yourself from your competition. This is where your company is going to go, okay, I can use this now. This makes sense to me. This is why I'm buying this. A lot of people use the RMM platform as remote control and very basic monitoring. That's it. Maybe patching as well. But RMM with automation can allow you to deploy software. That's something that a lot of my partners use. You can do it with chocolately, you can do it manually, whatever you want, super easy. You can do maintenance routines, so do cleanups, you check for stuff and clean up and things like that, no biggie. You can apply a variety of fixes. So what a good example is, they had a partner who had an issue with Dell Open Manage. There was a known bug and Dell's answer was, we're not gonna fix it. So what they did is they went in and they asked me to create an automation. I did a script to clean that up and fix the issue with Dell. Now all we did is deploy that in bulk, and then we're good to go. So that became super easy. And then you have the option to standardize baseline as well. So basically what you would do is you would say, okay, I want UAC on, I want strong passwords on, I want this, I want that, I want that, I want that. And this automation will run to make sure that all these things are applied properly. So you can use automation to go really, really, really making sense of this. Now, the next thing on this is to keep your clients in the loop. That sounds like a silly thing to say to some people. It feels a little weird saying that, but a lot of people tend to try to kind of hide their magic stuff in the background and don't tell the customer. I kind of disagree with that. One of the biggest challenges you're going to see is that when you do things properly, when you get more mature, when you start using automation, when you start using deep monitoring, your customers might even know what you're doing, and that will lead to customers maybe leaving. I've actually had MSPs tell me in previous panels that they've actually lost customers because of lack of automation, because of lack of value. The customer was like, you know what, I'm paying you this amount of money every month and I'm not seeing the value anymore. I'm going to switch to this other MSP who's charging me less. It just became commoditized. And the customer actually came back a couple months after going like, why am I having all these issues? Like, well, because I was self-healing all these things. I was remediating it for you in the background. They're like, well, we didn't know that. And they literally lost customers because they were not able to articulate everything they do. Now, the lesson here is not to not do automation. The lesson here is to communicate to your customers effectively. So you want to let them know that you're going to do all these things. You want to let them know as part of your contract, we're going to automatically remediate all these things. Or if you don't want to tell them you're automatically doing it, just tell them this is part of our contract. We'll take care of it for you. They don't need to know how you're doing it if you don't want them to, but they should know that something's happening and that it's there so that they understand the value. As your number of tickets go down and the time you spend fixing stuff manually goes down, they will start to ask questions about, what is the value here? And that becomes very important. So an example of that is that you're going to do a specific task like deploy a software or do a migration. Have a pop-up first. It's like, hey, is that okay to do right now? If you finish a maintenance, so you did an upgrade to one of their tools and they can use their machines again, you can do a pop-up on their desktop. It's like, hey, everything's done. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. You can also use your branding in front of them through the input prompt and other things to remind them that you're there. You can use a tray icon that's brandable to go, hey, Mr. Customer, can I help you with something? Do you want to use our portal? Do you want to submit a ticket? Do you want to do this or that, right? And you can also use it to broadcast events about upcoming downtime. For example, we had an outage with 365 a few days ago. We had some issue on our side with something, and since email was down and Teams was down, nobody had any way to be reached. So you want to have a way through a tool like this to notify everybody, like, hey, we're aware of the issue, we're working on it, don't panic, it'll be okay, I'll take X amount of minutes or hours, and then at least they know what you're working on, they know what you do. So that makes more sense that way. Now, you also want to look into weekly maintenance rather than monthly. Doing maintenance on a recurring matter more frequently than other is an easy value add. If you charge your customer, I don't know, $5 a month to do your proactive plan, or $10 or whatever it is per device, and you say, you know what, I'm going to do this weekly, it costs you nothing. It's literally just changing it from doing once a month to do it once a week. And then the customer will feel more at ease, right? Like, okay, you're more secure, you have this, you have that, and this is going to be better for you, this is going to be better for the customer, and this costs you literally zero. Everything I've gone through so far is things you own. As long as you're not using the inventory only or the discovery and agent, you use a full license. Everything I've shown you, the templates, the monitoring, everything is part of your platform, it's part of your cost. There's no additional cost to be using that, so you should really, really benefit from it. So we really recommend to take the time to get familiar with it and definitely leverage and use as much as you possibly can. Because once again, this will make a lot more sense for your customers. All right, so we talked about that. Now, if you want to standardize your delivery with your template, we talked about templates a little bit. Templates allow you to map to your scope. If you tell your customers for every machine, I'm going to do this maintenance, I'm going to monitor this condition, I'm going to ask you to reboot once a week, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you make a list of 3 to 5 to 10 to 20 things that you're going to do for them all the time, put that into a template, apply the template automatically, then you don't have to worry about it, right? I'll show you how to apply the template by automatically in a few seconds, minutes maybe. The templates can also contain checks or tasks or both. So this allows you to standardize your checks, allows it to set universal thresholds. That's a very important thing to do. You will need to tweak some of them, no questions. If my laptop has a 1 terabyte drive, the threshold for this might be different than a laptop with 100 gig drive. So obviously you may need to tweak that, right? No problem there. But it's something that you need to consider to at least have a majority of things unified and then handle the exception. I always go with the 90-10, the 80-20 or the 90-10 rule as far as configuring, monitoring, and tweaking. If you have 1,000 devices, you have to tweak 10%. Yeah, it's 100, but it's better than 1,000. So obviously that helps. You also want to improve your hardening. You want to use your endpoint for increased security. This is something that we're putting a lot of effort in on my team right now, is building policies to, again, check UAC, check smart screen, check a variety of different things. So you want to leverage your hardening requirements with automation and with your templates. This also can help you automate onboarding. You don't have to worry about every single device having to tweak them. You want to just say apply the template and be done with a lot of it. And then that will make sure that you keep up with whatever maintenance and onboarding and that you don't forget about it. A lot of people, when they onboard a customer, are like, oh, it takes too long, I'll ignore it. And obviously that's not ideal. So yeah, those are the ones. Now John's asking if there's a written guide we can view to create an automation manager policy like what I showed, this cleanup. Honestly, they're in the cookbook. So if you go to the cookbook, you can download an existing one there. There's just cleanups, multiple of them. You can go into the institute. In the institute, you can see the automation manager bootcamp. There's actually the lab manual there. So that is a written guide on how to do it. So all of those are resources that are available to you. My team spends a lot of time creating these to make it easier on you. So that is all part of stuff that you can grab and use if you have not done that already. Now, again, you saw this earlier when I talked about template. So let's go take a quick look at a couple of things that I didn't show yet. So in templates, if I go to templates here, you make your templates, you tweak them, you say, okay, this is my default template now for this or these customers. Go to settings, in new install setting. Then you can go to server workstation at a global level or at a customer or site level. And you can say, I want to use this and use this new template I just did. And for workstation, I say, yes, please. And I can do the same thing. So you want to use whichever one makes sense. You can say, here's a default for all clients moving forward. Still, always leave this checked. This checkbox means that if it sees a D drive or an E drive or a Windows service and it's not in my template, it will still add it. So I always recommend to leave that. Then you say, you know what, this client here is a little particular. He wants a different template, different setup. I'll use this one instead, right? And you can have the default at the global level for everybody, and then maybe this one and this one site will be slightly different, right? Like, you're welcome to do that as well. And that will give you more flexibility into your applications. So any new device that shows up into any of those customers or sites will automatically inherit one of those templates. And those templates will then allow the customer to have the proper monitoring, the proper automation, the self-healing, the configuration that you do, that you told your customers you would do anyways, right? So the more you can leverage these, the better you're gonna be. Now, someone was asking earlier, how do you delete monitoring in bulk? You know what? I don't want to monitor my, I don't know, let's say the AV check for Windows Defender. I can click on this and then say delete checks like this. If I do that, or edit in bulk, but delete, I can then say, okay, I see that this Windows antivirus and anti-spyware is on all these devices. Select them all, and then I can say delete them. So you can bulk delete if you wanted to. Now, you want to be careful because you don't know if they're failed or not. So you want to make sure that you're careful about how you do this. If you know that this customer is on this plan, check this customer, then do these devices, then do this customer, and then carefully do it. You're welcome to do that, but you want to make sure that you do it in an easier manner. So I hope, Christopher, that answers your question. Hopefully it helps a little bit. We are now going to talk about the policies, and RMM made a switch to policy configuration for most modules, being they control patching and so on and so on. So that is what we're going to focus on for a little bit, because I think there's an important piece to understand for most of those little modules. So first one is going to be take control. Take control, it's your remote control. You get in the machine, you do stuff. That's what you guys do most of the day in, day out, all the time. So that is why it's very important to me. And that is why I want to show you guys some of the tweaks you can do to make it easier. So the first thing is helping with the end user experience. You want to customize the message that you guys users can see, if any at all, when your session starts. So you have the option in the take control config in RMM to tell the end user, hey, Mr. Customer, we're going to connect soon. We need to do this, blah, blah, blah. Is that okay? And then they can say yes or no. If they say no, you're not allowed to come in. If they say yes, then you're allowed. You also have the option to choose how long it stays, and also the option to choose when it shows up. Do you want it to when it shows up, do you want it to automatically connect you if they don't answer, right? So basically, not everybody knows who you are. In a lot of cases, one of your customers may have 20, 50, 100, 1,000 users, and they may not all know who you are. So when you connect to their machine remotely and their screens get taken over, they may feel the, hey, my computer is being hacked, little panic, right? Even though they might be on the phone with you, or they may have been on the phone with you before and say, hey, I'll log in soon, I'll help you out. Some people kind of react a little negatively when you unattendedly connect. If you connect through like a GoToAssist or whatever, they initiated the request, they initiated the control, they feel better about it. But when you directly connect to their machine without them having any input, it tends to make them panic a little more. So using a little pop-up costs you nothing and will give them a better experience, right? Like the more you polish your delivery and your experience with your customers, it will justify the higher price. Like we find that a lot of MSPs, they become almost like a boutique MSP where they offer higher end quality, higher end text, higher end everything, and they charge a little more for that. And the customers are willing to pay for that higher end experience, right? It's like if you're offered to go to a 3-star hotel or a 4-star hotel, some people will pick the 4-star, and that is how we see MSPs act as well. Some people will just buy a battle on price, give the lowest quality, lowest everything, but they are cheap. And a lot of customers don't want that. They'd rather have the personalized, warm, fuzzy experience. And that is what we offer you to do with Take Control at literally no cost to you. You already paid for this, so might as well use it, right? So in the config menu, you have the option to have a pop-up for the end user, just like you see here. Oops, thought I still had my little pen thing. There it is. You can request permission and then show it for how many seconds, right? 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. And the important one is this one. If the user does not say yes, do you allow the control session? This is useful in a case where the user says, I'm going for lunch, just connect, whatever, and they pop up and then you can connect, right? So you have the option to change that if you wanted to. Then after that, there's a few more things. We'll see that when we get to the demo, but the important thing to note is that even though you may set it up that way, if you have the permission to change the config, you can still change that to say allow connection without end user permission and then connect in. So you can switch the policy for that device to a open mode and just connect. And then once you're done, you change it back. So this is just one simple way to leverage the tool to make it easy on yourself. So if we go into RMM and take a look now, oops, wrong one. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is if I go to settings and take control, it's going to be where to go here. Go to policy. Now settings is where you choose which policy apply to whom. Policy is where you configure them. So what I usually recommend is to have 3. The default one, which is going to be whatever you choose. Your open. Open means no request. Just connect, don't ask for permission, just connect and do whatever, right? In any which case, no matter which one you use, you should always lock the machine when the session ends. Yeah, it's an annoyance for the end user. When you disconnect and the machine gets logged, you're like, oh, come on, I have to put my password again. But it's a safety thing. If you disconnect from their machine and their session is open, or you're logged in as the admin or whatever, well, then anybody can just take the session and keep working with it because you did not lock it. By doing that, you make sure that your tech will never forget because you do it for them, right? Having a visual indicator is going to be a little thing in the corner that says someone is on your machine. And you should, in my opinion, always have that as well so they understand who's connecting. So these little things will make your life easier. So that is the open one. The open one, once again, no permission, but always check those. The next one that I think most people should have is a default. The default, in my opinion, should be just like that. Request permission. This is a technician from this company. We need to do some work, blah, 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 blah. Is that okay? Then leave it there from 30 to 60 seconds. And then after it times out, typically I would say allow it. So if the user does not answer for a minute, you wasted enough time, connect and start working. And once again, log the machine, show indicator. Always, always, always. And then performance, I always leave default, to be quite honest. It's just optimization stuff for some people, but 90% plus will never need that. Once you've done these two, the next one, honestly, is a no permission. So the no permission is very aggressive. It's monitor only. That means the end user is not able, sorry, the technician is not able to click on anything. So he says like, hey, I'll get on your machine. I won't be able to touch anything. I don't have permission, but I'll be able to see your desktop and I'll walk you through this. In a lot of little tighter control environment, this is a very important thing. So they like to have that option. And then on the security front, request permission. If the user does not say yes, don't allow it. This is where you see that for higher requests. So this might be a fourth one where you say don't monitor only and then have this unchecked, but once again, this is going to be up to you. And then finally, always lock, always show. Those two, I cannot push that enough. That's important. So now that you have these, you basically say, okay, this is everything I need to do. I can come here. I can then go to take control settings. I can go and say, okay, for my servers, I want to use enable, and I want to use by default take control policy. Now this customer is special. He wants the no permission. I change him to that. So now every device on that customer will inherit that configuration. So if I go into a device and I do edit, right here, when I do edit and I go to remote access, it shows here, it's whichever one. So I'm gonna say, you know what, use no permission for him. And while I'm on the phone with him, I need to connect, like, oh, I'm not on my desk right now, I'm in a meeting. You know what, just connect and do whatever you want. No problem, sir. Edit, remote, change it to open, okay. Then right click, remote access, take control, boom, get on the desktop, do whatever you gotta do. And that will give you that availability. So these two, these options under those will make your life a whole lot easier. So again, it improves the customer quality because you log the machine when you leave, which is a security thing. You show that you're there with that little pop-up, always good. You request permission first. In most cases, you should always do that, in my opinion. You should put your company name, say, hey, you know, I'm the MSP contracted by your company to do this. This is my name, blah, 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 as a company. So that the customers see the company name, they feel better about it. Then they can choose if they want to let you in or not. Tends to yield better result. Again, higher satisfaction means better retention. Better retention makes more. So MSPs, what we tend to see when we poll the environments for customers, for every 5 customers that you onboard, you'll lose 4, is what we typically see. There's a huge amount of churn in some parts of the market. So losing customers and getting new ones costs a lot of money. You have to pay a lot of people, marketing and sales, to make money, to go and get those customers. You have to compete, you have to offer stuff, you have to onboard. And when you lose customers, you have to offboard, you have to give data, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's just, everything is tedious. So if you can keep your customers happy, keep them longer, little things like that may make a difference. What I typically say is you want to avoid the death by 1,000 cuts, right? You want to avoid all these little friction points, all these little frustration points that you can inflict on your customer when you know, the management there goes to their customer, their partners, and be like, hey, what do you guys think of our company for support? You're like, oh, I hate them, blah, 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 I have all these issues. That obviously is not good. That is not a good experience. That is not what you want to hear. So you want to do all these little things to make it easy on yourself. Next, if I come back here, we did that. Let's talk about patch management. So on the patch management front, you want to standardize patching as much as you can, and you set exception. We do a bootcamp specifically on patch. The reason that we do that is that there's so much content on patching. I have literally a 2.5 hour long bootcamp just on configuring patch, how it works, why, what you should do, and so on. And that's literally how much content there is. Having said that, some of the basics that I can go through for everybody today is that you should always configure the detection in the general settings to be done through the DSC. Most people want to have patch monitoring as a report only. Some people want to have both, but it's up to you. The installation should be scheduled at a time where machines are online. So on servers, like a 9 p.m. on Friday might be a good idea, or Saturday or whatever. On workstations, 9 p.m. If you're anything like me, your machine's never going to be online, so that's not going to work very well, which points me to this. If you miss your schedule, run it the next time the machine's online. That's a very important thing to do. What we tend to do with that is that when the machine shows up, if it misses Friday night, the user turns it on Saturday, Sunday, Monday morning, whatever it is, it will immediately install those patches and it will catch it up pretty quickly. So that is super important. One thing that you want to decide is, do you want to include the reboot if you miss? I always recommend the reboot after doing the regular install, but as far as if you miss, that I find is incredibly aggressive. That is why I typically don't check that. What I mean by that is, if you say, you know what, your patching is Saturday at noon, whatever time, and then the user is offline, it's the CEO. Yeah, Mauricio, that's kind of what I'm talking about, patching when the device is offline, right? So if you have a device that's offline when patching is occurring on like Saturday, you get to Monday mid-morning, the sales rep goes to a customer site, turns on his laptop, turns on tethering or Wi-Fi, and then patching occurs. That's great, it's gonna occur, but it's not gonna interrupt the user. If you say include reboot, it's gonna get a pop-up to say you're gonna be rebooted in the next 5 minutes. And if you just happen to do one of those big updates, it's gonna get a pop-up, say like you're being rebooted, and then you're down for 20 minutes. When he's in front of a customer, that doesn't look good. And that's when you get a very angry phone calls, right? So what you want to do is you want to schedule, if you miss your schedule, that way the machine's offline, you get patches installed. But this one I would not recommend using. What I will recommend is to use Automation Manager, and we have policies for that in the cookbook, to look for inactivity, to look for user sign in, sign out, to have pop-ups, to have warnings, things like that, so that if the machine's been online for 7 days, start warning the user. If it's been online for 10 days, enforce it, things like that. And then you can leverage patching and automation to do a proper job of rebooting. Rebooting is the biggest hindrance to rebooting, to patching working properly. So yeah, so that's what I'm talking about here, is that you can schedule the pop-up like this, that is branded, that looks UQ. You can tell the user can remind himself later, all these things like that. We also recommend periodically to clear that folder, Windows, software distribution, downloads, to remove any outdated or corrupt update files. It doesn't happen very often anymore. It's pretty good, but it's still a good option to do. And then you have all these options here where you can do the little pop-up for the end user. You can say, you know, allow him to defer reboot for an amount of time, and then after that, sorry, screw you, it's gonna happen. That's totally fine too. So yeah, so that is what you would want to do. So if we go into here and take a look, first step is to go into patch policy, right? You would want to configure a policy. I have a bunch of them. I'll pick one at random. So first thing is, personally, I like report mode for workstations and laptops, so you can see here at the top. And I like DSC. DSC means that the scan will occur when the device DSC runs. The cool thing about DSC is that if you set a DSC at 5 a.m. and the machine is not online at 5 a.m., the next time the machine is online, let's say 6 or 7 a.m., that DSC will run, or 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. Which means at least once a day, it will detect new patches. Sorry, I just need some water. Been talking a lot today. Then on the install side, like I said, you pick whatever time works for you, whatever day works for you. Reboot, I always like always, but some people prefer when required. It's going to be up to you what you prefer. And then finally, I would do it like that. Run, but don't reboot, right? That is what I would recommend. So this kind of setup is what I like. I also like to install patches around 11:30 or noon, because I find this is where people leave for lunch, because this is local time on the machine. You can see I have multiple time zones. This is local time. It's gonna patch at like 11:30 in the morning. By the time it's done, it'll be, you know, 11:45 noon. They're gonna pop up, hey, your machine needs to be rebooted. Perfect. They go for lunch, and you know, they miss 5 minutes of YouTube while they eat their lunch. Not a big deal. they can go socialize, right? So it's not as big a deal. So I find that this works really well. If it doesn't for you, that's fine. Pick a different time. To your point and your question, John, if a patch fails to install in that here, you have the option to say, if it fails, reprocess it and try, and then send me an email to notify me of it. This can get noisy, but Microsoft has been much better lately with patching. We're seeing a lot better success rates and fewer errors, which is nice. We like that. And I think this is going to continue. This is a trend that we're seeing more and more with Microsoft, where patches are a lot more reliable. So definitely something that I would expect to continue moving forward, to be quite honest. That's good. That's that. Just clicking on something, don't forget. So yeah, so that is our patch. That is what I would recommend. The last piece of this, yeah, whatever, would be to go into automation. If you go into the cookbook, you look for that. There's a inactive, I think, or reboot. Don't reboot. Restart system. The device has not been restarted in X days. Yeah. So this one, for example, will say, how long has it been since you've been restarted? It's been 14 days. And then your device has not been restarted for some time. Can you please restart? Blah, blah, blah. Policies like this are in the cookbook. You can go grab them. You can use them as tasks that will run once a day, once a week, whatever. So once a day, they were going to pop up. It's like, hey, you've not rebooted for a long time. Can you please reboot? So typically, I would say put that to like 7. That 14 was because the partner was asking me for 14, but I would do 7 personally. And then every week, every day this runs, and if they're over 7 days, they would keep getting bugs. It's like, hey, please reboot, please reboot, please reboot. And I have another version that says it's been more than 7 days. Please reboot, please reboot, please reboot, please reboot. Oh, it's been over 10 now. You're not listening. Screw you. It's happening. And you can force it after that point. So this is something we can leverage automation to do a good job, to warn you and take care. Rebooting the machine as part of patching or just in general is just a very good best practice. As far as optimizing your environment, that is the one thing that costs you nothing. That will make a huge amount of quality of life difference. What I mean by that is that when you don't reboot Windows, oops, wrong one. When you don't reboot Windows, Windows 10, for example, is very notorious for that. And you start having what I call little gremlins in your PC. It starts acting a little weird. It starts being problematic. And then you start having problems with said machine. So rebooting it from time to time is definitely a good idea. So I personally prefer that. And I'm going to reboot this guy right now just because I can. I don't want to put my password. But yeah, so I could reboot that there. But again, using automation is a very, very good way to do it. It takes care of it for you. The user gets notified, and then you're in much better shape. The last key area for today is going to be web protection. Web protection is a module. So actually, before I go there, I'm going to preface this. So far, everything I've showed you has been part of your RMM subscription. I'm making a line here. Starting with web protection, there is a cost to this. Web protection, you have to pay. There's a slight license fee. Don't ask me what it is. I'm not sales. I don't know. But it's very small. It's not expensive. What I'm going to suggest to you is to use web protection as a sales tool for yourself and to leverage it from a optimal manner to get more customers and get more money out of the platform. So having said that, web protection can be used very effectively as a sales tool. What you can do is you can configure web protection to work in report-only mode. When you do that, it will not apply any policy, will not restrict any traffic, will not do anything, will simply collect that data of what the users are doing so that you can go to the customer and take a look. So for example, you can go to a customer like, hey, you know what? We'll do an audit for a month on 3 or 4 of your machines just to see what your users are doing. Let's just take a quick look, right? From a security standpoint, it's a good thing to do. If I'm not mistaken, it's like $1 a device or $1.50. Like, it's very cheap, but don't quote me on that. Go take a look at sales. But let's say it costs you all in $10, whatever the case is, who cares? You do that for a month, for 3 weeks a month, you capture all this data, then you can go to your customers and show them a report. It's like, hey, your web bandwidth has been consumed dramatically by games. So your users are playing games on your computer during the day. They're using the machines for, whatever, for travel, for entertainment, for whatever, this and that, and this and that, and this and that. The system will collect all this data for devices you chose, will show you how much data is downloaded versus uploaded. So you can see, like, why is that user uploading so much data, right? Like, he uploaded 3 gigs in the last month, or 10 gigs, or 50 gigs, or 100 gigs. Maybe something's fishy here, right? Like, we've seen some of the attacks were done by stealing data, like we saw with Sony, for example. Monitoring the uplink bandwidth of your devices, not a bad idea. So for your end customer, this may become something they go like, you know what, I like that, I'll pay for this. And this is a very simple, effective tool. This is not fear mongering. I really recommend you don't approach it from a fear mongering standpoint, but you simply show them the facts, right? Show them, look, this is what we see for download and upload data. This is what we see for the kind of traffic you get. This is what we see for this, what we see for that. So what we recommend is blocking this kind of traffic during the day, which we can do. And then this sales tool will turn into opportunities, which will turn into money, which then everybody's happy, right? Like this is a very, very good thing to do for you as the trusted advisor. So if we take a look at this, what you would need to do, I'll take this guy here and I'll turn it on him. So I would do edit, edit server. Sorry, my brain stopped working for a second. I'm going to say turn it on and then apply the, I guess, server policy. That's fine. So now it's going to start capturing that kind of traffic on that machine. And then I'll do this one and I'll do the same thing. Edit, web protection, yes, server as well, whatever. Okay. Now I'm doing this by hand. You don't want to do that. What you would do is you would go to web protection policy, and then you have different one. This one is laptops only. That's why it doesn't show. And I'll make a report only server. The report only one will be based on this, and it applies to all, because why not? Once you make that policy, this policy that you're going to create should be report only. See the difference? When I uncheck this, I see all this cool stuff. When I apply it, it only captures data, right? So when I create this, what I would then recommend doing is coming here and taking this device again and changing it. So I should have used the report only mode. So it doesn't block any traffic. It will simply capture it and will let me know what's happening, right? It will just keep that data, keep it closed so that I can run reports in the weekend, the month, or whatever the case is. So these devices are not being monitored. I know what's happening on them. This is kind of nice. And as we capture data through reporting, I'll know. Now, as you guys evolve past that and your customer says, yes, okay, I see the value, now you're going to do one to say default no games during the day. So I'll say, you know, base it on the regular desktop, apply to everybody I want. And then what you want to do is you want to uncheck report only. And then how much do you want to be aggressive, or up or down? Do you want to show notification? Do you want to show these? Up to you. Then you can choose any branding you want. That way, if they have any concerns, they can call themselves or you, whatever you want. What kind of web security do you want to allow or block? What kind of category do you want to filter on? Whitelist, blacklist, but the more important one to me is schedule. You can see, you know what? Oops, other way around. I did it reverse earlier today. So what you would do is you would say allow during these times, and then block outside of these, right? So you would say basically between 8 and 5. So 8, leave it for noon for the lunch, and then until 5, allow it again. And then you repeat that for the whole week, and then weekend you just allow always, because it's weekend, who cares? So you can choose if you want to allow these things for specific times of the day and disallow it for others. Now you don't have to do that, but this gives you the flexibility, if you choose to do it, to do that. Once again, it's just from a flexibility standpoint to offer that to your customer. This one, there is a cost. So like I said, this one you want to look before you use, obviously, because you're going to have to pay for that a little bit. It's not that expensive, but it's a good tool. Now, I'm not sales, as you can tell, if you can't tell yet. I am absolutely 100% not sales. I have no vested interest one way or the other. I just found that a lot of partners have started doing this and using it as a sales tool, and I found that there was a lot of value there. So I figured, why not explain that in part of this course? Because this is where you can leverage a platform that you already pay for to do these things. Obviously, if I wanted to show you more, you could go through risk intelligence, you could go through backups, you could go through MDM, through manage AV, and so on, and whatever, right? I'm not going to go through all that depth because that's not part of this. But this is something that you should really consider and start using. Since we have a little bit of time left, one thing I do want to touch on that I find incredibly important is the importance of looking into Mac patching. What we've added, there you go, we have the Mac Mini that Charles, my Mac nerd, has. If I go into tasks, I have the ability to add. Give it a second. Add, and it's called Run Manage Patch. What I can do with that is I can say do Apple updates as well as third party, take the production stream, and hide the notification. Just completely do it seamlessly. Now I can then say run this, actually run every day, doesn't matter, at let's say 10 a.m. And then if you miss your schedule, do it the next time, which is fine for Mac. It doesn't affect as much performance than this. Now this task will go on the machine, will run every day at 10. And because I'm not patient, I'll say run now. It'll take a little bit of time. But this task will run on the Mac, will then report back, will do the Mac patches, and will take care of all that fun stuff for me. This is very useful when you want to have the ability to patch those devices that typically would not have been able to do so. If you go to the online help and you search for Run Manage Patch, which is what the service is called, give it a second, another second. Okay, 2 more seconds, there it is. If you've not figured it out yet, I'm not a patient person. When I do Run Manage Patch, there it is, Run Manage Patch. This walks you through what it does, blah, 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 everything it does, that's fine. And then as you go here, you can see what is my third-party patch list. Here's everything that we patch. This is a long, very, very long list. So I'm not gonna read through it, that would be boring. But just keep in mind, there is a ton of different apps from very old to very new, obviously, that you will be able to patch. And we basically add all these to the dashboard and we control that list. Same thing for Apple patches, to do Apple updates, to update Boot Camp, to update Safari, and so on. The system controls and deploys all of these for you so that you don't have to do it by hand, which is super nice. So you really want to leverage a platform as much as you can to do these kind of things. A lot of people, I find, they overlook that. They don't take the time and they don't invest into their platform enough. So if you're not familiar with it, I really recommend you take a look. You take a look at what you can do, and if you use it more and more for things like that. That again, if you already have your Mac agents deployed, you already pay for this. There's no cost, right? And then finally, we do have the Apple device management that was recently added. If you're not using that, you really should. There's a Mac Boot Camp specifically for that because there's a lot of depth to it as well. So that's essentially it. That is the extent of everything I had for this. Oh, actually, I have the agent management stuff. I forgot about that. I keep forgetting that. I have one more goodie. The agent, first of all, has a color-coded stuff. If you go into the dashboard here, there's all these weird colors. They're color-coded for a reason. Red means that a server left ungracefully the dashboard. Yellow is the same thing, but for a workstation. Then gray means that the device is offline or not talking to RMM, but it left gracefully, which means it checked out. It said like, hey, I'm gonna go to sleep now. I'm being shut down, whatever the case is. And then when it's white like that, white means that it's online simply, right? So these statuses, if you're not aware of them, definitely worth remembering. I didn't know that until fairly recently, so something I'd like to mention. But inactive workstation, yeah, sorry, that is the last part. The last part about this is that you can automatically clean up the devices when you added this. The agent is reinstalled. So if you reinstall the agent manually, it will remove the old one and put a new one in. That's important because it doesn't duplicate devices because you don't want to pay for 2 devices. The other thing is that you can auto clean up inactive workstation. So this one is something that will save you money and obviously not make us any money, but it's something that will help you. You have the ability to control the fact that if the device has not been online for 90 days in the dashboard, automatically delete it. This is aggressive. This is not for everybody, but this is an option that you may want to leverage if you feel that it makes sense for you. Similarly, there's an option that's been added recently here where you can not allow the end user to remove his own agent. So if you find an overzealous user is removing its agent from time to time, you go to general settings here, you go to, it's under agent management, and you can say, no, you can't do that, right? So you can put an email address and then you say, no, don't do that. And that will prevent them, as long as they're on this version or above, that will prevent them from removing the agent. This will warn you and everything as that happens. And then personally, I like to use this one and then say, the week before you delete the agent, and that. If the device shows up after 3 to 6 months, it should basically just not be able to check in, and you will have to reinstall the agent, is the behavior that I expect it to do. I heard someone say recently this might have been changed to actually just recheck in and make a new device, but my understanding is that it will not. If you delete the device, it will simply tell the agent to uninstall the next time it calls home. So that is the behavior I'm expecting. All right. So yeah, so that is what I recommend you use. And it hopefully just helps a little bit from a money saving point of view. It's not really a cut or anything, but it's something that will help you save a tiny bit of money as you use this more and more. And yeah, I just got confirmation. If you delete the device and the device checks back in, it will delete the agent. It will uninstall the agent when it comes back home. That's what I thought. I just want to make sure, Connor. Someone saying, where can I go to connect with someone from the Enable team to help with things? Honestly, the easiest is to go to support, and the second easiest is to come to the office hours. If you have issues in general, the office hours is a webinar that we do every month, and we answer any how-to questions whatsoever. You can go to forums and ask questions. You can ask me directly through Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever you want. I'll do my best to help. It's not always easy, but I'll do my best. But honestly, office hours is absolutely 100% the best way, because that is really that is definitely something that you can do. Yeah, so there's objects in Automation Manager to upload, download. There's different objects. Honestly, they're all little building blocks. So if I say download, let's say, as you're talking about, I can download file from AWS or from Azure. So I made this Azure blob downloader a few months ago. You can put in your storage information, the file location, and the blob name. That will download the blob to a local place. So these objects are just little building blocks using PowerShell or .NET code or a mix that allow you to do various actions. So that's what really those are, John. The automation bootcamp that's in the institute, or that we do live every few months, you're welcome to watch that. Definitely something you can do. If you want to talk pricing for AV backup, things like that, Brian, you will want to talk to your PSM. I'm going to take a note and have someone reach out to you, because I would not have that information because I am not selling. I think I said that enough times today. But I will find someone to get back to you for sure. And with that, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your day. That was my pleasure today to do that. I thoroughly enjoy these boot camps, as you can probably tell. So merci, John. And with that, we will talk on the next one. Thanks, everybody.